7 of the 26th edition of the Winter Universiade. In the city of Trento, the Italian Dolomites are on the way. Perfect so far in Trentino. A stunning corner of the world to show at its very best. Coming up, the snowballs are back in action. Both half-pipe competitions. Snowboarders have been back in action for the second time at this Universiade and really enjoying the sunny conditions at Monte Bondone. After the qualification runs for the women's half-pipe took place on Monday, the semi-finals and finals went ahead on Tuesday. The top 4 qualifiers, all Chinese, who are expected to sweep the podium today, but Carla Somaini had other ideas. The 22-year-old also competing in the slope style later this week for Switzerland, despite hitting over 80 points in her semi-final, was never able to scale the same heights in the final. This first run only worth 66.5 points. With her second run not going according to plan, the Swiss would land up in 5th place. Japan's Misa Honda was the best placed non-Chinese in initial qualification, but slipped a little in this morning's semi-final to only just scrape into this final. The 19-year-old from Gokushikan University put together a solid enough first run in this final before pulling out all the stops on the second run. The judges giving her 75.5 points. That's enough to pile the pressure on those to follow at this stage. Honda sitting what will be a surprised medal position. Zhu Zhishan, one of a quartet of Chinese that dominated qualifying and put down a fine marker worth 75 points in her opening run in this final. However, that score eclipsed by Honda at the start of the final round, so the pressure was really on Zhu to deliver. Zhu came 13th at the 2011 World Championships and was able to improve slightly on this second run, a score of 76.75, eventually enough to edge Honda by just over 1 point and guarantee a medal. Sun Zifeng, by far the most experienced of the top-ranked competitors in this competition. The 22-year-old from Shenyang Sports University, a veteran of the previous 2 Olympic Games, managing a 7th place finish in 2010. And she's also managed 7th, 5th and 8th in the last 3 World Championships. There are also 2 World Cup wins on her resume. However, Sun finding herself eclipsed in this final despite a score of 80.25 from her first run. Li Shuang has utterly dominated this half-pipe event here in Trentino. The 21-year-old who, like Zhu before, is studying at the Harbin Institute of Physical Education and is a former bronze medalist from the 2009 Junior World Championships, has also managed to find 6th place in the most recent Senior World Championships. On top of that, Li freshman bagging her first ever World Cup win in Riga, Finland just 4 days ago. Li, the only woman to manage over 90 points in qualification, and despite not quite hitting that high in the first run of the final, scored 91 the second time down, taking gold by over 10 points from Sun. Sun Huan never hooked anything up in the final, the 4th Chinese athlete, finishing dead last of the 6 competitors. However, Li still able to become the 3rd consecutive Chinese woman to win this event, heading a Chinese clean sweep of the medals.
The one guy who made it to 90 points yesterday in the qualification, one of the favorites today.
The men's half-pipe also coming to a climax in the blistering sun on Tuesday. Many being caught out by the slightly smaller pipe here in Trentino, with the sides only going up 18 feet rather than the more usual 22, and really putting some of the competitors off their timing. China's Huang Xiying has a personal best of an 8th place finish in the World Cup event, that coming 2 years ago on home snow in Yabuli. The 23-year-old from Shenyang Sports University has started 5th in qualifying here too. hopeful going into the final, posting a challenging 71.5 points on his first run. Sit fourth, but going backwards after being unable to improve second time down. Wu Jae-won was under pressure going into his second run after bombing out first time down. The South Korean from Chung-An University in Gyeonggi coming into this event rather under the radar after a 24th place at the 2012 Junior World Championships, but did manage to qualify in second place with over 80 points. His second run in the final looked great, and Wu thought he'd done enough to pinch a medal. He was then disappointed to see the judges only give him 75.25 points and miss out by the narrowest of margins. Raphael Imhoff, very much an unknown quantity coming into this event with no World Cup experience to speak of. Based at the Haute École Spécialisée de Suisse Occidentale in Sierre, the 22-year-old Imhoff was off colour in initial qualification and seemed to hit his stride in the semi-finals before pulling a great first run out of the bag in the final. 76 points, said the judges, and he would take the bronze medal by less than a point from Wu. China's Hu Yi looked very impressive indeed with his fourth place in the qualification round with a run worth 77 points. However, Hu believed he had more in the bank and really seemed adrenalised for his first run in Tuesday's final. The 23-year-old from Shenyang Sport University seemed to catch the eye of the judges too. 84.25 points first time down, despite bombing out on the second run. He had done enough to grab the silver medal, but there was only ever going to be one winner. Spain is not exactly a hotbed for half-pipers, and they'd certainly never managed a medal in this event in 7 previous Universiades. Ruben Vergés, though, was a hot favourite for the title by the time he lined up to tackle the course for the first time in the final. The Spaniard had already aced qualifying with the only run worth 90 points. He pulled that out of the bag again in the final. His run worth 88.75, top of the pops. In the end, no need for the 26-year-old Vergés to do better on his second run. That gold medal already done and dusted. Spain putting Japan's run of 2 consecutive golds to bed here in Italy, with China and Switzerland completing a cosmopolitan podium. The men slid back into view on the ice rink in Baselga de Pine, with the sunshine once again out in force for their 4th event of this Universiade, the 1,000 metres. Sung Qingyang of Chinese Taipei may only have managed a single points finish in this year's World Cup in this event. He will be going on to represent his country in both the 500 and 1,000 metres at the Olympics in Sochi next February. He was paired up with home hope Jan Del Dossi, whose sister Yvonne Del Dossi tripped on the start line in the second round of the women's 500 metres here in Trentino, having taken a slender lead from the first round, going on to finish in a lowly 17th place. Jan himself had only managed an 18th place finish in the 1,500 metres on Sunday. Sung getting very much the better start of these two though, and with a point to prove after failing to register a time in the 500 metres on Saturday and trailing in 28th place in the 1,500. Sung starting like a bullet, then grimly hanging on around the final lap, setting a time of 1 minute 10.64 seconds to grab himself a spot on the podium, while Del Dossi would ultimately finish in 10th. Jan Marek Szymanski has been one of the stories of this Universiade, and most certainly the star turn for the speed skaters. He'd already become the first Pole to ever win a medal in the 5,000 metres on his way to gold, and then managed to repeat that trick in the 1,500 metres on Sunday. Now the 24-year-old from the University School of Physical Education in Poznan was going for a golden triple in the 1,000 metres and was up against even Simon Johansson. The Norwegian finished only 40th in the 2011 World Championships, but was managing to keep up with Szymanski in the early stages here, even leading the way around the opening lap before the poles started to crank his way through the gears. Johansson, in fact, would fall foul of the judges in this one, clipping one of the bollards a lap from the end to be disqualified. Szymanski, though, went on to clock a time of 1 minute 10.3 seconds. That would ultimately be just outside the Universiade record, but enough to sit in first place, at least for the moment. But now the moment the crowds had been waiting for, as Merke Giacomo Nenzi took to the ice. The Italian had already become his country's first ever medalist in the 500 metres on Saturday, taking home a silver medal, and then followed that up by striking silver again in the 1500 metres 1 day later, behind the dominant Szymanski. So the 24-year-old now even more determined to finally drape a gold medal around his neck in the 1000 metres. It's very much his specialist event, having finished in a very rapid 6th place at the single distance World Speed Skating Championships earlier this year in Sochi. Keeping Nenzi company in this heat was China's Guozhan Tian, the Harvard Institute of Physical Education student, and his 10th in the 1500 metres, but was never able to even keep close to the Italian. Nenzi, a local lad from the Universiade of Trentino, and milking the atmosphere for all he was worth, half a second ahead of Szymanski at the first split, and then over a second ahead at the second. And although he did lose a little bit of time on his final lap, Nenzi stopped the clock at 1 minute 9.32 seconds to finally take gold. Delight then for the home fans as Nenzi added a goal to his 2 silvers on home ice here in Trentino, winning by nearly a whole second. That time also good enough to break his compatriot Enrico Fabrice's Universiade record, set in Torino 6 years ago on his own way to gold. Ice hockey tournament, the Czech Republic came into their final Group B game needing a good win in order to secure their place in the quarter-finals. They were up against a Great Britain side not expected to put up much of a fight, having failed to score a single goal in their opening 2 games against Russia and then against Slovakia. The Czechs quickly into their stride, taking just 1 minute 20 seconds to get on the scoreboard. Antonin Ruzicka, taking advantage after his team managed to get round the back of the British net. One soon became 2-2. Perel Rector making some waves as Team GB failed to cope with a hard shot into the box. That's his first goal of the tournament. There were just over 4 minutes on the clock and the Czechs eased into a 3-goal lead. This time a bouncing puck getting the better of everyone, apart from Lubomir Kovarik, who scored a belter in the Czech 7-1 loss against Russia. This is the worst possible start for the Brits, and the Czechs really going for the jugular. Picked up Novak with this lovely slap shot from the blue line. Far too hot for James Flavel to handle. Shots, in fact, raining in on Flavel's goal. Rostislav Vanek with a nice angle shot to make it 5-0. And then Patrick Pulishek cut through the British defence to make it 6 at their second goal in just 20 seconds just before the buzzer at the end of the opening period. Into the second period then, and the Brits now simply looking at damage limitation after a harrowing experience in the opening 20 minutes of their final game of this tournament. The British holding out for over 12 minutes this time before heavy pressure resulted in Rostislav Vanek finding the net for the second time in the match. Just before the end of that period, insult added to the Brits' injured pride as the Czechs managed a short-handed goal. Jakub Babka had scored their opening loss to Slovakia and now found space for his second goal in the tournament on the break. Early in the third period, and with GB with 2 men in the sin bin for hooking and high sticking, the Czechs scored an inevitable 9th goal. Josef Golda capping off some nice interplay with Kovarik. Dominik Machno was another man to score in their opening game against the Slovaks. He put the Czechs into double figures as the Brits visibly sagged. And at the end for Flavel, replaced between the sticks by Luke Lawrence in the 45th minute. Team GB held out for another 6 minutes before shipping their 11th goal of the game. Dominic Steiner this time driving in a fine shot from mid-distance, opening his account here in Trentino. There was time for one more goal though, just over a minute from the end. Andrei Peshka from close in, the Brits managed just 5 shots a goal throughout the match. The Czechs running out easy winners then, that's enough to put them into the quarter-finals, although they'll now face title favourites Russia once again, having already lost 7-1 to them in their earlier group game. The Brits meanwhile go home without having scored a single goal, having shipped 31 themselves in just 3 matches.
Smoke flooded to the air. I see my skin growing old. I look at myself in the mirror. I feel my blood running cold. Wake up, rain on fire, running higher. I'm falling down through the skies. Wake up, rain on fire, running higher. I'm falling down through the sky. It's in my brain. I can't explain. It's in my brain.
This is just the 3rd time that women's ice hockey has been included in the Winter Universiade, with Canada taking the gold medal on both previous occasions. The Canadians once again hot favourites here in Trentino and fully expecting to make it a perfect 5 wins out of 5 in the group stage, under the wise tutor of the University of Alberta coach Howie Draper, up against a Japanese team that have already surprised many here in Italy. The Canadians slow to get going, waiting only 13 minutes to scramble their opening goal for Amanda Parkins. The second goal swiftly followed though, this time the Maple Leafs sweeping through the Japanese defence. That allowed Jessica Pinkerton to bag her 4th goal in 5 games. The Japanese, who won their opening 3 matches before being undone by the Russians, were proving tricky customers against an outstanding favourite for gold. Just 1 goal in the second period for Canada. Parkins with her 2nd of the game, thanks to some classic poaching. The Canadians faster into their stride in the final period though. Winnipeg-born Tatiana Rafter was the leading scorer for the University of British Columbia last season. Has been shown some great form here in Italy as well, popping up at the near post to grab her 5th goal in 5, just 1 minute in. Canada finally getting their dander up now. Alexa Nomor turning one in from close range as gaps finally started to appear in the Japanese defence. Space all over the rink now for Canada, and that allowed Parkins to complete her hat-trick after Rafter's shot came back off the post. At the 27-year-old's 8th goal of the tournament. Less than a minute later, and the Canadians grabbed their 7th of the game. Caitlin McDonald doesn't score many, but this slap shot is well worth waiting for. Canada then completing a run of 5 goals in 6 minutes with their 8th of the game. No more with her 2nd of the match after some lovely interplay from the Canucks. The final icing on the cake for Canada coming 6 minutes from time. McGill's Gabrielle Davidson with a tournament-leading 10th goal in 5 matches. Canada now able to relax with a 9-goal lead. The Canadians perhaps letting their concentration slip right at the death throw. Sophie Brown in the sin bin for tripping, the Japanese finally able to get on the board. Ayano Shijo adding to her goal from the opening 10-1 win over Great Britain. So Canada with a 100% record in the group stage, while Japan will be joining them in the semi-finals. The bad news for them, they have to face Canada yet again in Wednesday's semi, while Russia play the USA.